Excellent. I think we are good to go. So excited to be here. When talking with National Sports Forum, I wanted to figure out a way for specifically for this topic to talk about esports and gaming, get a lot of exciting information out there, but at the same time ensuring that we're staying on theme with the COVID era and obviously the virtual environment that we're in. So for today, I specifically wanted to talk about how through the last year and a half and just through this COVID virtual mindset that we've all been facing, how we as an organization within gaming and esports has been adapting ourselves to the market, and then also how we're creating new virtual experiences for fans to get involved with. So some exciting things to share, some interesting case studies, a lot of stats that I'll be going through, and just kind of like a brief overview of gaming and esports. I won't be going too deep into what esports is, why it's important, et cetera, et cetera. There's a ton of great resources out into the market at the moment, whether that's Newzoo or Esports Insider, Esports Observer, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many resources out there. So I don't want to be creating a situation where I'm reiterating the same information, but rather diving into potentially some new topics that you haven't heard of or haven't been covered too much within the market to date. So I thought it'd be good just to give a little bit of background on myself. So currently I operate as the Director of Business Development for the Pittsburgh Knights Esports Group. We are what I would classify as a gaming conglomerate, and I'll get a little bit more into the Knight side of things here in a little bit. But I've been in gaming for 10 years now, since around 2011, and have started back in the what I would classify today as old school, like Minecraft and Roblox and TeamViewer and all of those old platforms that we used to utilize for gaming, and some of these game titles that were more focused around younger demographics. So started on that side, really on the server hosting end of things, because back in the day, if you wanted to play with friends or family or like-minded individuals, in a lot of cases, you couldn't just go and boot up your own lobby like you could today, but you had to go and rent a middleman server that both parties could connect to. So I operated in the server hosting side for a significant period of time. Myself and a couple colleagues started a variety of different businesses on that end, generated thousands, tens of thousands of clients over the course of the years that we operated that, exited that side of things and ported over to the event side of gaming. Spent a lot of time down in Houston and operated a variety of different gaming conventions and events across the US, and did primarily focused on brand activations and experiential within those environments. So, I've kind of had the fortune of being on both ends of the spectrum with, the physical side of things and kind of the environments that we've been used to, and now on the virtual side of things with a lot of the events and virtual activations that we've been producing that have been fully virtual over the last couple of years. So that's really exciting to see. Since I ported over to the Knights around 2018, there's been just a massive influx of attention around the competitive esports space and just the gaming ecosystem overall. So excited to dive into some interesting things here that we can share with all of the viewers tuning in. So the first thing that I wanted to point out, at least on the Knight side of things, is, we really structure ourselves as what we would classify the first non-franchise city-based esports team. And what that basically means is when the Knights organization was founded back in 2017, there wasn't a whole lot of organizations that inputted a city name within, the actual title and name of the organization as well. And while a lot of people just reference us as the Knights or, whatever that may be, Pittsburgh has always been a primary focus for us as an organization. If anyone has visited Pittsburgh, if anyone has lived here previously, that the community groups that work together and that the city was really built on is a very prideful group, and we rally behind our sports team. We rally behind the city. We wanted to take advantage of that from an organization perspective. So there's a lot of exciting things that we focused on in terms of integrations with the city. And additionally, as we were spinning up really early on in the Knights infrastructure, we wanted to focus on, you can go and find money anywhere. We didn't necessarily want to take the route of VC funding super early on. We wanted to partner with groups that, yes, could execute, some sort of investment spend, but we also felt that the connections and resources being provided around those partnerships are just as valuable as cash investment. So we partnered with organizations like the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and various other sports organizations and partners, as well as players from a variety of different sporting groups. I have up here Evgeny Malkin, who's a really good example, currently on the Penguins NHL team. He used to play Counter-Strike back in the day, so there was obviously some already existing gaming synergies that existed there. So we really wanted to focus on partners that could bring some sort of connections, resources, expertise, and best practices that we could bring over to the gaming and esports world. And that also ties in with Wiz Khalifa's group and Taylor Gang. They're also investment partners, but they have significant inroads and experience on the music side of things, and have just created a massive amount of integrated fans and engaged audiences. So there's a ton of best practices that we've been able to take from them as well. And really, with gaming overall, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that all of these teams, including ourselves, take a little bit of a different approach. And, so we currently operate in 7 titles across our portfolio. And that ranges from Valorant to Rocket League to Rainbow Six Siege to Gears of War, some of the top titles that exist in gaming at the moment. And I always like to use the example of picking stocks, because that's really what it's like. You're trying to choose which game title has the highest rate of return, both from an audience side of things, from the game developer and what they are investing into the space, what type of promotion and relevancy it's going to have. A really good example is Apex Legends. Love the game personally myself, and but when it launched, it was super, super popular. And this was back in 2018, I believe, when it initially launched. So super popular title, but kind of lost a little bit of its likability, I guess you could say, not necessarily in a negative way, but there were a lot of competition and a lot of other games that released around that similar time frame. And we saw it come out of relevancy for a good bit of time, and just recently it's blown back up and is one of the most popular titles in the world at the moment, especially on platforms like Twitch and YouTube. And we're seeing, massive inroads with the competitive space as well. So a good example there is, back in the day, we had an Apex team. As the game went out of popularity, we decided to remove ourselves from the game and reevaluate the situation. And now we've re-entered, as a lot of other esports teams have, because it is, reaching those upper echelons and kind of the areas that we're focusing on. So again, very similar to stocks, we have to watch the ebbs and flows of where the gaming industry is headed, what titles we want to focus on, et cetera, et cetera. So, the Knights organization, one of the things that we separate ourselves apart with is we've also focused on significant inroads on the data side. That was one of the big things whenever I first started with the organization, that gaming overall and just esports teams overall, we're not focusing on how do we accurately track the data of our fan base. And so one of the biggest things is that, back in the day, the normal response if a brand said, hey, what do we get out of this? It's, well, you get your logo here, here, and here, and there's an opportunity that you're going to get significant brand lift or, massive exposure and blah, blah, blah. But there wasn't really any type of projection of, well, here's the amount of impressions that we think will generate. Here's the amount of click-throughs. Here's the engagement rate. Here's the QI media value, which is a old school, Nielsen metric to judge broadcast value and everything else. So none of that was taking place. And furthermore, there wasn't an opportunity to track brand campaigns. and teams weren't really focusing on that. So that's one of the things that myself and my team really spearheaded, at least internally at the Knights, and a lot of other organizations followed, was focusing on how can we represent accurate information in terms of how a campaign is performing to our partners. And with the topic of this being virtual, virtual is the easiest way for us to integrate very unique experiences for the fan to get more intimately connected with the brand. And when I say brand, it's not necessarily just the Pepsis of the world or the Kellogg's or the Kraft Heinz, but it's also sports organizations. It's also individual player athletes. And I have a couple different examples through this presentation on how all of that breaks down. But the point being is, what we've seen through this data tracking is that we've been able to make changes from an organization perspective to generate, in a lot of cases, an engagement rate that's upwards of 480% higher than other comparable teams of our division. Our brands are 5 times more likely to have a positive interaction with our fan base compared to a lot of other esports groups that operate in the space. And furthermore, we've been able to track metadata across all of our social accounts to understand, what is our growth rate and how our brands are being integrated into that. So over the course of 2020, which was really the last full calendar year that we've been able to track, we saw 44 million unique social profiles engage with Knights content, and partially due to COVID, partially due to other things, but we've seen a massive uptick just in terms of virtual engagements within gaming, which have been really exciting for us to see. Just wanted to provide a little bit of a breakdown in terms of global presence as well. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but US and Canada, what we classify as North America, is the primary region. Mexico, we classify as part of Latin America, which is our secondary market that we're focusing on. And then obviously EMEA and APAC are also some areas of focus for us. Gaming is global. At the end of the day, we do classify everyone as a gamer, regardless if you're playing on your mobile phone, waiting for your doctor's appointment to be called, or whether you are gaming for 7 hours a day on your $5,000 gaming setup in your house or your studio or whatever that may be. Everyone is a gamer. So, we really want to focus on how we can create almost a Manchester United approach, which is that global fan base, but a well-integrated local footprint, and create a situation where, we're able to take Pittsburgh and the Knights global while still integrating with very specific, unique activations that not only people in Pittsburgh can enjoy, not only people in US and Canada and Mexico and Latin America can enjoy, but individuals in EMEA and APAC can also get involved with in some way, shape, or form. So it's really about, focusing on how can we stay competitive within the market and, continue to grow our fan base. So one of the things that I wanted to call out is that for a lot of organizations and brands that are looking to break into esports for the first time, a big thing that the first thing that you need to think of is gaming does not equal esports, and esports does not equal gaming. So what I mean by that is esports is a small piece of gaming. Gaming is a much larger division of media. So if you think, I always like to use the example of an apple pie, where if you think of the whole pie as gaming and the outer crust is esports, the most visible piece in a lot of ways is the esports component, because it's getting all the flashy headlines. It's getting, the crazy salaries that players and athletes are getting paid. It's getting, the major sponsor dollars that are being integrated into the space, the content, everything else. But gaming is so much larger than just esports. So when we're working with a brand partner, regardless if it's, Kellogg's, an individual athlete, or a major sports organization, it's always focused around, how do we reach that larger gaming audience, but how do we also engage with the more integrated esports and competitive audience as well? Because both have pros and cons in terms of how they will respond to activations, how they get engaged with things, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to spend too much time on like esports data or anything like that, but I really just wanted to point out the difference between esports and gaming. And, brands need to focus on gamers, not just esports fans overall. And I think a really good quote here is that for the first time in generations, we are witnessing the birth of a new sport. That should be plural, because esports, plural for a reason, because if we're in Valorant, Rocket League, Rainbow Six, those are all individual sports, at least from our classification. But anyways, gaming is what every traditional sports league is desperate to become: young, global, and increasingly diverse. And I think that really attests to, even today's day and age and what we're focusing on. So the question is, from a brand perspective, and again, brand means a couple different things here. How do they engage with gamers? And really what that ties into is understanding the Fan Journey Playbook. How do we take a fan from detached to devoted, not only within the Knights organization or within a specific gaming audience type, but also from the brand's perspective? How do you engage a fan that is not really interested or has just been exposed to certain activations, to, living, breathing, purchasing, and engaging with your products or services on a regular basis? And what we found through this is that gamers are really hard to reach. It's very, very difficult to get gamers' attentions. They're very fickle in a lot of different ways. And not all gaming titles dictate the same audience, meaning someone that's a fan of Valorant may not be a fan of Rocket League, and someone that's a fan of Rocket League may not be a fan of Rainbow Six Siege. So the reason that that's important is the same way that one of your family members may be watching and is a dedicated fan of the NFL, but they're not a fan of MLS, or they're not a fan of MLB, or vice versa, right? So the same thing exists within gaming. And what we've actually identified is that there are 9 different audience segmentations within gaming, from the lapsed gamer all the way up to the ultimate gamer. And I won't